Okay, and it's 2 o'clock now, but we'll give people a few more minutes just to be able to log in. We're still having people kind of streaming in, so we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, we can get started now. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining today. The hearing for the Community Heat Pump Deployment Program will begin in a few minutes. For those interested in the hearing for the Oregon Rental Home Heat Pump Program, that hearing will begin at 3 p.m. today. This hearing is for the Community Heat Pump Deployment Program. In a moment, we will introduce staff from the Oregon Department of Energy and ask participants to introduce themselves in the chat and state whether they wish to offer comments during the hearing. For those of you joining via phone, I'll ask for you to be unmuted, and you may then introduce yourselves and state whether you wish to offer comments during the hearing. We'll also offer the opportunity for attendees to ask clarifying procedural questions after taking testimony as well. So hello, my name is James Kogel from the Oregon Department of Energy. I will be the hearing officer for today's proceedings. We want to thank you all for participating today. As staff introduce themselves, could participants please introduce themselves in the chat? Please state your name, any affiliated organization, and whether you wish to offer comments later in the hearing. So we'll go through the Oregon Department of Energy staff. I'll start with Pandian.
Thanks, James. My name is Pandian Krishnaswamy. I'm managing the heat pump programs. Welcome to the hearing.
Thanks. And Ruchi.
Hi, Ruchi Sudhir. I'm Associate Director for Strategic Engagement. Thanks for being here.
Patricia.
Hi, I'm Patricia Phillips. I'm running your meeting. If you have any issues, just put a comment in the chat, and you can go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug?
Hello, I'm Douglas Bear, Senior Incentives Analyst in the Wildfire Recovery Program.
Stephanie?
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Cruz. I'm a facilities engineer with our energy efficiency and conservation section, and I am providing technical support for the heat pump program and rulemaking.
Thanks. Kayla?
Hi, I'm Kayla Barboza, and I'm one of the program analysts on both the community heat pump program and the rental heat pump program.
And Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Bajevitz, and I'm the other incentives analyst on both heat pump programs.
Okay. Okay. Got everyone. And I am going to ask Patricia, can you unmute the call user 3 with the phone number? I think we have one call user who's on the phone. Just want to give them a chance to introduce themselves. Thank you, Patricia. You should be unmuted now if you're joining via just the phone. Okay, I will come back and offer another opportunity later on in the hearing to introduce yourself and state whether you want to provide testimony. So, Patricia, if you want to mute that call user, we'll circle back. They might just have stepped away for a moment. So we will start with a brief summary of the proposed rules before discussing the procedures for the hearing, and then enter into the testimony stage of the hearing. Materials for today's hearing, including draft rules, are located on the Oregon Department of Energy's website, oregon.gov/energy. So a few words about using WebEx for those of you who are new to the platform. You can use the raise hand function to ask a question and use the chat function to type questions in. For those of you on the phone, you can use this *3 function to raise your hand. And that'll all *3 again will then lower your hand. And *6 is kind of the unmute function as well. Does anybody have any questions about using WebEx before we begin? The raise hand button is down at the bottom near the share button. If you do have any of those questions, and we can take you off mute so you can ask them. Or feel free to type them in the chat as well. Okay. I'm not saying any hands. And just as a reminder, yes, I saw Stephanie had reminded everybody in the chat that if you are wanting to provide testimony during the hearing, if you could make sure you put that in with your introduction in the chat, that would be helpful. Thank you. So following the heat dome event in 2021, Oregon legislators passed Senate Bill 1536 in 2022. This bill had a number of components, one of which was the Community Heat Pump Deployment Program. The bill appropriated $10 million for the program, which will provide grants to eligible entities around the state to administer the provision of financial assistance for the purchase and installation of heat pumps and related upgrades. This program is not as a result of the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, and we do not yet know the timeline and details for the federal programs laid out in that act. So the Oregon Department of Energy will contract with one eligible entity for each of the 11 regions in Oregon and one eligible entity for each of the federally recognized Indian tribes in Oregon. The grant amounts will be allocated according to the proposed criteria here listed on the slide. It's a baseline of 1.5% of the total available funding will be allocated for each region and each tribe. This comprises 30% of the total funding. 30% of the available funding will be distributed to the regions based on the average heating zone for all the counties in the region, multiplied by the number of households considered energy burdened, meaning that they spend greater than 6% of their income on home energy costs. 40% of the available funding will be distributed to the regions based on the average cooling zone of all the counties in the region, multiplied by the number of households that spend greater than 6% of their income on home energy costs. Each of the tribes will receive a portion of the funding allocated under the second and third bullet from those regions in the tribe service area. The amount will be based upon the number of occupied housing units in the tribe in comparison to the number of occupied housing units in the regions in the service area. Only certain entities will be eligible to apply for a grant from the program. A list of the entities is detailed on this slide. In addition, the entity must demonstrate it serves or represents at least one environmental justice community within a region or members of a federally recognized Indian tribe in Oregon and has the capacity to administer the grant funds for the program. The proposed rules establish efficiency requirements for the heat pumps, a baseline efficiency which is set at the level of the federal standards that just came into force at the start of this year, and a higher efficiency standard that could make the customer eligible for a higher level of financial assistance. The maximum amounts able to be awarded per dwelling are also established in rule. However, the rules do allow the eligible entity to propose lower amounts in their grant application should they wish to customize the program for their region or for the tribe. Certain upgrades are also eligible for funding. A description is outlined on the slide. The draft rules also allow the entity to specify which upgrades will be eligible when applying for the grant. Requirements for the project to be eligible are established in the draft rules, but the proposed rules also allow each entity applying for a grant to propose additional requirements. And on the slide, you can see a summary of those requirements listed. A requirement from the bill, which is reflected in the rules, is for the eligible entities to prioritize the financial assistance to the groups listed on the slide. Rules outline the method for determining whether an individual would qualify as being considered within an environmental justice community, but the rules also leave room for an entity to propose an alternative method. The proposed rules also outline the information required in the grant application, how the applications will be reviewed and then evaluated, and details about the performance agreement for successful selected applicants. The rules also detail record keeping and reporting requirements for entities and their partners, and rules outlining the actions that Oregon Department of Energy can take to remedy any deficiencies in the performance of the entity or their partners are included. I see we have a question from David, and this is an appropriate point where I can field any kind of just summary questions about the rules if we will have one. So David, you said you had a couple of questions. I'm happy to answer a few at this point. I think you are unmuted at this point now, David.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're a little quiet, but I can hear you okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation, and perhaps you'll cover some of these things, but I wanted to just confirm at some point that I had some questions, and if appropriate, that can wait for the public testimony portion.
Questions, I can address any questions now. Public testimony is typically just kind of an opportunity for you to provide feedback on the draft rules, so I'm happy to cover any questions you might have at this point.
Okay, well, my questions are regarding the environmental justice communities and clarification on the definition. I've read the Oregon statute, and seems like almost every place in Oregon would qualify to some extent, excepting a few neighborhoods. I have about 4 more questions. Would you like them all at once or address them?
No, I can take the environment one at a time. The environmental justice definition, that is a definition that comes from the statute and not something that we're able to change in a rule.
Okay, thank you. Second question would be regarding the climate zone maps from BPA. Are those simply a multiplication of 1, 2, or 3 to the appropriate county? And the number of households that would be considered, I forget the term, energy at risk.
Energy burdened, yes. Stephanie, are you available at this point to come on camera? I know you'd helped me with the kind of calculating the areas, the cooling zone areas for the regions.
Yeah, so the population and then the base amounts allocated to each region are the primary drivers. And then, yes, it's a multiplicative factor, weighting the remaining funding between the regions based on their heating and cooling zones.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I was wondering about the intent of equity or proportionate distribution throughout the regions. Just wondering if the tendency was envisioned that it would be isolated to one particular geographic area, or if it was designed to be more equitable throughout the entire region.
So the grant will go to the regional entity and they will administer the grant within their region, if that answers your question, David. So they will be responsible for the distributing the incentives within their region, so the counties within their region.
So am I hearing you say that the expectation would be, say, in my particular region, there's 7 different utilities and probably, well, 4 counties. If one of those counties' CAP agencies received the grant, they would be expected to work with the other adjoining counties and utilities? So
we have there's a number of different ways that could work. One way could be that if there's an area that an organization that covers just one specific area within a region, that they could partner with other eligible entities to be able to cover the whole of the region. We have another mechanism where people are able to propose an alternate boundary for a region as well. So there's a couple of different ways that that could work, depending on the capacity and kind of what the proposal is put forward by the entities.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Just two more questions. Thank you for your patience.
No, it's great.
In the rules, it states that the eligible entity may notify utility of heat pump installation. I would request that that becomes a must.
So that's kind of that kind of desire, I would say, it fits best in the testimony portion, and just kind of want to answer any clarification questions at this point for you.
Okay. And then a question about the duration of this program. Is it several years, or is there a termination point?
There's no termination point listed in the bill, but we own been allocated $10 million at this point for the program, and that we will be incorporating kind of a date for the performance agreements to close in the performance agreements. Obviously, if there's changes to the funding level for the program, that is something that could change, but currently we'll be proposing that a finite time frame for the actual agreements with the selected awardees in the performance agreement.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll reserve that question or request for the testimonial.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Okay. If anybody else had any quick questions on the the rules themselves, I'm happy to field those. Otherwise, I will continue with the moving into the kind of the procedures basic. Okay, so the Oregon Department of Energy appreciates the information and feedback that stakeholders have provided through the rulemaking process. A notice for today's hearing was filed with the Oregon Secretary of State on November 29th, 2022, and published in the December 2022 Oregon Bulletin. This hearing will be conducted according to the Oregon Administrative Procedures Act, ORS Chapter 183, and the Attorney General's Model Rules. In addition to the opportunity to present oral comments during this hearing, anyone may submit written comments by email or by mail until 5 p.m. January 6th, 2023, so tomorrow, 5 p.m. This is the close of the public comment period for everyone. Comments received after this date will not be reviewed or considered by the department unless the department decides to extend the public comment period for everyone. After the close of the comment period, the Oregon Department of Energy will review issues raised during the public comment period and prepare a hearing officer's report. The Oregon Department of Energy will make the ultimate decision regarding these rules. If anyone has joined since the beginning and hasn't introduced themselves in the chat, I'd like to ask you to please state your name, any affiliated organization, and whether you wish to offer comments. I'll use kind of that to call people up for testimony. So please, if you are desiring to provide testimony, please put that in the chat. This hearing is being recorded to maintain a permanent. Oh, sorry. And yes. Great. Thank you. Smart chat coming in. As a reminder, we will be holding the hearing of the Oregon Rental Home Heat Pump Program at 3 p.m. and we'll accept comments on that program in that hearing. This hearing is being recorded to maintain a permanent record. Before beginning your testimony, I'll ask you to state your name and affiliation with an organization, if any, for the record. And if you have written statements, you can email them so that they'll be part of the record. And I can take any additional questions that people may have about before we begin. If anybody has any additional questions, they can raise their hands. let's give people an opportunity to introduce themselves in the chat and state whether they're wanting to provide testimony. And we have a couple of call, at least one call user. And if you are wanting to raise your hand as a phone call user, you can use the *3 function, and that will allow you to raise your hand. We can bring you off mute, and you're able to introduce yourself as well and state. And if you're wanting to provide testimony, we can you can let us know, and we can get that sorted. Okay. So it looks like everybody has introduced themselves. So we will begin the public comment section now, and I will ask David, who had those questions, to begin. If Patricia, you're able to bring him back off mute. David, you should be off mute now and able to.
Thank you very much. This is David Harris, Springfield Utility Board.
Okay.
And can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you great. Thank you.
As a manager of one of the many public utility programs, I would respectfully request that notification be given to the local utilities when a participant is set up to receive grants or funding for their particular home. The reason for this would be that many of us have heat pump, ductless heat pump programs already in place, and I would prefer that we not double fund a particular individual. Second comment would be if there are requirements or preferences for limited income households, it would be helpful to have details about qualifications, especially with respect to their equity as far as savings, pensions, etc., that may not show up on certain financial disclosures. Thank you. That's everything.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, David. Okay, looking down, I've got Jonathan Van Rokel from Lake County Resources Initiative. He said you may wish to provide some testimony. Patricia, if you're able to unmute Jonathan. And Jonathan, you're now unmuted.
All right.
Yep.
This is Jonathan Van Rokel with Lake County Resources Initiative, small nonprofit in Lake County, located in Lakeview, Oregon. We do have our own pilot no-cost program we are affiliated with. We're doing work with Energy Trust of Oregon on that pilot program. And one of the things that has come to mind is the, I would say, misrepresentation to some degree, or confusion, not intentional misrepresentation, but confusion of the product or product when discussed as a heat pump. We're finding that installed units are not keeping up with sub 40-degree temperatures. in many participants' homes. And so there's seems to be internally, right, some work that we need to do to clearly market the program. One of the issues we've ran into with that is it's intended to offset old resistance on electric heating. And so that I think is kind of a conflict where looking at the offset of either a heating or cooling type, we're finding that participants are a little bit confused when it's intended to offset a heating system and it's not keeping up with sub 40-degree temperatures. This, of course, could be due to different efficiency standards and type of equipment. And so, but I just wanted to raise the point of and I'm not sure, again, in the rules here, I'm not sure if there is a descriptor where we're looking to offset or replace heating, current or existing heating types. But the note on that would be to err on the side of caution in the language and how we describe the benefits to participants on the use case for these specific types of units and efficiency standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Appreciate your comments. Okay. Just gonna go back through and make sure I'm not missing people that requested. Okay. So I'm not seeing any additional people that wish to provide testimony yet. If someone else is and hasn't stated so in the chat, feel free to raise your hand. We can bring you off mute. Feel free to drop it in the chat. Again, for those on the phone, *3 is the how you can raise your hand if you want to provide testimony. Let's give anybody a moment to. Oh, yes. So I see Thomas has. Thomas, you should be now unmuted. Could you introduce yourself?
Yep, sorry about that. This is Thomas Elzinga with Central Electric Co-op. I would also echo a little bit of what David from Springfield Utility Board had to say. As far as notifying utilities, if the utility itself isn't running the program. However, for a different reason, we actually would supplement those costs with our program dollars, and we would not mind kind of stacking those incentives and rebates to further get that technology out to those homes. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
No, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So just give anybody just another moment. If anybody wants to provide testimony, feel free to raise your hand, drop a message in the chat. Okay, so we have another one, Juan.
Yes, this is Juan with the Eugene Water and Electric Board. And I'm just going to echo what both other utilities have provided as well to notify utilities. So depending on our various program structures, we're able to be aware how we move our own programs according to what is being provided through your efforts for customers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So just give a moment to, if anybody is wanting to provide a testimony that hasn't, we have Joe, Patricia, can you unmute Joe, please? Joe, you should be unmuted now. Can't hear you right now, Joe. This is Joe Hull. Oh, you're unmuted again. Can you be muted again? Sorry, there we go. Patricia's unmuted you. You should be able to speak. Not hearing you, Joe. Okay. Okay, so I think it looks like we've lost Joe. Give an opportunity for. Okay. Give an opportunity for anybody to raise their hand if they wish to provide testimony or drop something in the chat. Okay. I'm not seeing any additional hands go up. Just a reminder, if you're on the phone, *3 is that raise hand function. Okay. Well, oh, sorry. There's Joe. You back? Did you want to provide to speak? Sorry, I'm still not hearing you. Okay. Okay, got your message in the chat. Appreciate it, Joe. We've unmuted again, but can't hear you. Okay, no worries. Yeah, not sure what's happening with the audio there, but hopefully we've captured anything that you wanted. And if you wish to provide written testimony when you safely arrive wherever you're going, please feel free to drop an email to and my email's on the screen, but it's james.kogel@energy.oregon.gov. It's now in the chat as well. And we're accepting written comment until 5 tomorrow. So, okay. All right. So thank you to all attendees. As a reminder, written testimony will be accepted until 5 p.m. January 6th, 2023. So tomorrow, 5 p.m. No other comments or exhibits will be accepted after this date unless the department decides to extend the public comment period to everyone. After the close of the comment period, the department will review all comments and summarize all comments in a hearing officer's report. The Oregon Department of Energy will make the ultimate decision regarding these rules. We will be holding the hearing for the Oregon Rental Home Heat Pump Program at 3 p.m. today. The link to access the hearing is the same as this one. We'll be waiting until 3 p.m. to start the hearing to ensure anyone joining at 3 p.m. does not miss the hearing or any of the information included. Before we conclude, I can answer any rulemaking process questions. If anybody has any, again, feel free to raise your hand. I'll drop something in the chat.
Can you hear me, James?
Yes.
Sorry, this is David again. Just a clarifying question. Is it correct that the heat pump deployment program is targeting homeowners, as in owner-occupied homes?
So currently proposed in the rules is the fact that this program, the community heat pump deployment program, would be to benefit the owner-occupier of the home.
Thank you.
Okay. So I've got a question in the chat about expected timeline for application due date. At this point, I can't really give a hard date. We would be looking to finalize the rules in the next this kind of early on this year, and then we'll be opening up an opportunity announcement to allow people to apply to the program. That will be open for about a month, at which point we'll then close and review the applications. So that's kind of just like a rough timeline, or at least not timeline. It's a rough kind of schedule of activities that we'll be undertaking, but unable to kind of commit to kind of a time for that to happen. Obviously, we're looking to enable the entities to start up their programs as soon as possible. So we're hoping to get this going soon, but we'll just need to kind of go through the process. I hope that at least provides some information for you, Jonathan. Any additional questions? So again, this was the hearing for the rulemaking with a filing caption of grant program for eligible entities to provide financial assistance for heat pumps and related upgrades. And the time is now 2:43. Thank you for coming and providing comments. This concludes the hearing. We'll start the Oregon Rental Home Heat Pump Program hearing at 3 p.m. Thank you very much.